The man in the barrel. What if everything you think you need to be happy, don't you? What if the pursuit of more money, more success, more possessions, is exactly what's stealing your peace? 2,400 years ago, a philosopher tested this idea. He gave away everything he owned, lived in a large clay barrel in the streets of Athens, rejected every comfort civilization offered. He slept like a dog, begged for food, wore rags that had more holes than fabric, and the wealthiest citizens of Athens walked past him every day on their way to marble halls and elaborate feasts, debating virtue while he simply lived it. But he became so free, so completely unburdened, that when Alexander the Great, conqueror of the known world, the most powerful man on earth, stood before him and offered him anything his heart desired, this philosopher simply looked up and said, "Stand out of my light." His name was Diogenes, and tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you'll discover why this man, living like an animal in a barrel, understood freedom, peace, and happiness better than any emperor, king, or wealthy merchant who ever lived. But how does someone arrive at such radical wisdom? How does a person go from comfort to a barrel, from society to the streets, from respectability to shamelessness? The answer begins not with enlightenment but with exile, with a scandal that would strip everything away and, in doing so, reveal what freedom actually looks like. Let's go back to where it started. Next chapter, who was Diogenes? Exile from Sinope. The story begins not with wisdom, but with scandal. Diogenes was born in Sinope, a prosperous Greek colony on the Black Sea. His father was a banker responsible for minting the city's coins. They weren't poor. They had status, security, a comfortable life. Then something happened that would change everything. The details are murky, lost to history. But we know this: Diogenes and his father were caught defacing the currency. Some say they mixed cheaper metals with the silver. Others say they stamped the coins with unauthorized symbols. Whatever the specifics, they committed a crime against the city's economic order. The punishment was exile. Imagine losing everything in a single day. Your home, your family's reputation, your place in society, being cast out, forced to wander, becoming a stranger everywhere you go. For most people, this would be devastating, the end of the world. But for Diogenes, exile became liberation. As he was driven from Sinope, someone shouted, "Your citizens have condemned you to exile." Diogenes turned and replied, "And I condemn them to stay." In that moment, something shifted. What society called punishment, Diogenes reframed as freedom. He had been released from the prison of civilization, of expectation, of needing to maintain appearances. He would spend the rest of his life exploring what it meant to be truly free. Next chapter, arriving in Athens. Diogenes made his way to Athens, the intellectual heart of the ancient world. This was the city of Socrates and Plato, of the Academy and the Lyceum. Here, philosophers gathered in covered walkways called stoas to debate virtue, justice, and the good life. But Diogenes looked at their debates and saw something else: hypocrisy. These philosophers talked about virtue while craving fame. They discussed self-control while enjoying luxury. They praised simplicity while living in comfort. Diogenes decided to do something different. He would not just teach philosophy with words. He would embody it, live it, become it. If virtue meant self-sufficiency, he would own nothing. If wisdom meant seeing through social conventions, he would violate them deliberately. If freedom meant independence from material needs, he would live like an animal. And so he found his home, a large storage jar, a pithos, lying on its side in the public square. It became his dwelling, his statement, his philosophy made visible. People walked by and stared. They mocked, they whispered. And Diogenes simply lived, present, unbothered, free. Next chapter, the barrel, his home. Close your eyes and picture this barrel. Not a wooden wine cask, but a large ceramic jar, the kind used for storing grain or olive oil, wide enough to crawl inside, tall enough to sit up in, heavy clay walls that kept out the rain and provided shade from the Mediterranean sun. This was no temporary shelter. This was Diogenes' chosen residence. For years, he lived in this jar in the middle of Athens' marketplace, making his home where commerce and philosophy intersected. The barrel was both practical shelter and profound symbol. It said, I need nothing more than this. No walls to separate me from the world, no door to lock, no possessions to guard, no mortgage to pay, no neighbors to impress. When people asked why he lived this way, Diogenes pointed to the dogs wandering the streets. Look at them, he'd say. They have no homes, yet they're content. They own nothing, yet they lack nothing essential. They live by nature's rules, not society's demands. The barrel removed the buffer between Diogenes and reality. When it rained, he got wet. When it was cold, he felt cold. When he was hungry, he begged for food without shame. But this exposure wasn't suffering, it was clarity. Every discomfort, every inconvenience stripped away one more false need. And beneath all those needs, Diogenes discovered something surprising. He didn't actually need any of them. The barrel wasn't poverty, it was liberation. As you rest here now, imagine what it might feel like to need so little, to be so unburdened, to have simplified your life down to only what truly matters. That lightness is available to you. Next chapter, the lantern story. One morning, as the sun climbed over Athens, Diogenes did something strange. He lit a lantern in broad daylight and walked through the crowded agora, holding it high, peering into people's faces. Merchants called out, Diogenes, what are you doing? The sun is shining. Philosophers stopped their debates to watch this curious spectacle. Citizens gathered, pointing and laughing at the madman with his unnecessary lamp. Finally, someone asked him directly, Diogenes, why do you carry a lantern in the middle of the day? He looked up, his face illuminated by both sunlight and lamplight, and said simply, I am searching for an honest man. The crowd fell silent. Because they understood, he wasn't just looking for honesty, he was demonstrating its absence. All around him, people played roles. Merchants inflated their prices. Politicians made promises they wouldn't keep. Philosophers taught virtue while practicing vice. Everyone wore masks, performed scripts, pretended to be something they weren't. Diogenes, with his lantern, was holding up a mirror to Athens, showing them what they'd become. A city so full of pretense that genuine honesty had become invisible, requiring a lamp to find even in bright daylight. The lantern story became famous across the ancient world. It still echoes today, 2,400 years later, because the problem hasn't changed. We still live in a world where authenticity is rare, where social media teaches us to curate perfect versions of ourselves, where resume inflation is expected, where how are you is answered with fine even when we're falling apart. As you drift deeper into rest, consider this. What if you didn't have to pretend? What if you could be exactly who you are, without performance, without polish, without the exhausting work of maintaining an image? What if honesty, even uncomfortable honesty, was the path to peace? Next chapter, Alexander the Great. Now picture the most powerful man in the world, standing before a man who owns nothing. The year is approximately 336 BCE. Alexander of Macedon, soon to be called the Great, has arrived in Corinth. He's young, charismatic, commanding. Within a few years, he'll conquer most of the known world. But first, he wants to meet the famous Diogenes. Alexander finds him in the Craneum, a grove outside the city, lying in the sun beside his barrel. The young conqueror approaches with his entourage, generals, advisors, soldiers. They form an impressive procession, armor gleaming, wealth on display. Alexander stands before Diogenes, casting a shadow over the philosopher. "I am Alexander the Great," he announces. "I have heard of your wisdom. Ask anything of me, and if it is in my power, I shall grant it." This is the offer of a lifetime. Alexander could give him land, wealth, position, honor. He could make Diogenes one of the most powerful men in Greece. Diogenes looks up at him, squinting against the sun now blocked by Alexander's figure. And he says calmly, "Stand out of my light." That's all, 5 words that echo through history. Not give me gold, not make me an advisor, not grant me estates. Just move, you're blocking the sun. The crowd gasps, soldiers reach for their swords. Who speaks to Alexander this way? But Alexander laughs delighted, amazed. He turns to his companions and says, "If I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." Because in that moment, Alexander understood something profound. He had conquered cities, but Diogenes had conquered desire. Alexander commanded armies, but Diogenes needed nothing from him. Alexander wore the crown, but Diogenes was free. The man with everything met the man who needed nothing, and recognized which one had more power. As you settle deeper into rest, notice this. True power isn't having everything you want. True power is not needing it in the first place. Next chapter, the Dog Philosopher. The ancient Greeks called Diogenes the dog, kynikos in Greek, from which we get the word cynic. It wasn't meant as a compliment. They called him this because he lived like a dog. He slept in public spaces. He begged for food. He urinated and defecated openly, arguing that natural functions shouldn't require privacy. He barked at people who annoyed him. He was shameless, uncivilized, animal-like. But Diogenes embraced the insult. He turned it into philosophy. "Yes," he said, "I am a dog. And like a dog, I live by nature rather than convention. Dogs don't worry about status. They don't hoard possessions. They don't lie awake anxious about tomorrow. They exist in the present moment, meeting their needs simply, without pretense." He watched dogs in the streets, how they slept anywhere, ate whatever they found, played without self-consciousness, defended themselves without hatred, and moved on without holding grudges. Dogs, Diogenes observed, are the only philosophers who have figured out how to live. Think about what he meant. A dog doesn't compare itself to other dogs and feel inadequate. It doesn't worry about what other dogs think of it. It doesn't accumulate belongings it doesn't need. It doesn't mistake social status for genuine worth. A dog simply exists, fully present, fully alive, unburdened by the elaborate psychological prisons humans build for themselves. Diogenes chose to live this way deliberately, not because he was insane, but because he was conducting an experiment. What if we stripped away everything civilization told us was essential? What if we lived by nature's requirements rather than society's demands? What he discovered was freedom. Uncomfortable freedom, perhaps, socially unacceptable freedom, but genuine freedom nonetheless. As you rest here, breathing slowly, imagine what it would feel like to shed some of that weight. Not all of it. You don't need to live in a barrel, but just some of it. The worry about what others think, the need to perform, the endless measuring of yourself against impossible standards. What if you could be as unself-conscious as a dog just for tonight, just for these hours of rest? Let that possibility settle over you like a blanket. Next part, the core of cynicism. Suffering comes from desire. Now we arrive at the heart of cynic philosophy, the core insight that makes everything else make sense. Diogenes believed, and taught through his life, that suffering doesn't come from external circumstances. It comes from wanting things to be different than they are. You're not unhappy because you don't have enough money. You're unhappy because you desire more money than you have. You're not suffering because your life is objectively terrible. You're suffering because your life doesn't match the ideal you've created in your mind. The gap between reality and desire, that's where suffering lies. Consider how this works in your own life. The moments of deepest contentment usually aren't when you're getting what you want. They're when you stop wanting anything at all, when you're fully present with what is, rather than yearning for what isn't. A perfect sunset becomes less perfect the moment you wish you could photograph it better, share it online, make it last forever. The wanting interrupts the experiencing. A comfortable evening becomes uncomfortable the moment you start comparing it to someone else's vacation photos. The desiring creates the discontent. Diogenes saw this pattern everywhere. People in Athens weren't suffering from actual deprivation. Most had food, shelter, safety. They were suffering from imagined needs, needing finer clothes, larger homes, better reputations, more impressive philosophies. So he asked a radical question: what if we simply stopped wanting? Not stopped caring, not became passive or indifferent, but stopped letting desire drive us, stopped mistaking "I want this" for "I need this." Stopped believing that getting what we want would finally make us happy. Because here's what Diogenes noticed: fulfilling one desire doesn't end desire. It just creates new ones. You get the promotion, now you want the next one. You buy the house, now you want a better house. You achieve the goal, now you want a bigger goal. It never ends, unless you step off the wheel entirely. As you drift toward sleep, notice how peaceful it feels to want nothing in this moment. You're not trying to be somewhere else, someone else, something else. You're simply here, breathing, resting. This is what Diogenes was pointing toward. This absence of wanting. This radical acceptance of what is. Next chapter, Virtue as Self-Sufficiency. Diogenes stood in the marketplace one afternoon, watching a small child drinking water from a stream using only cupped hands. The philosopher paused. He had been carrying a simple wooden cup in his sack, the one possession he'd kept for drinking. But watching this child drink freely, needing no tool, no vessel, no possession at all, Diogenes threw his cup away. "A child has beaten me in simplicity," he said. This is the second principle of Cynicism. True virtue is self-sufficiency. The good life isn't found in accumulating resources, skills, or possessions. It's found in needing less. Think about how backwards this is from everything modern life teaches us. We're told that success means having more options, more tools, more capabilities, more things. That security comes from abundance. That happiness requires acquisition. But Diogenes noticed something. The more you own, the more you must protect. The more skills you develop, the more you must maintain. The more you have, the more can be taken from you. True self-sufficiency isn't having everything, it's needing nothing. The wealthy merchant in Athens owned ships, warehouses, slaves, estates, but he couldn't travel freely. His businesses needed constant attention. He couldn't sleep peacefully. Competitors and pirates threatened his wealth. He couldn't trust anyone. People wanted his money, not his friendship. Meanwhile, Diogenes owned nothing and could go anywhere, sleep anywhere, trust his own sufficiency completely. Self-sufficiency doesn't mean isolation. It means not being dependent on external circumstances for your inner state. Your peace doesn't require perfect conditions. Your contentment doesn't demand that everything go your way. Your well-being isn't hostage to other people's approval or market conditions or political situations. You become like a deep well that never runs dry, not because water keeps flowing in from outside, but because the source is within. Consider the things you believe you need to be happy: a certain income level, a particular relationship status, a specific achievement or recognition, specific conditions in your environment. Now notice, in this moment, without any of those things changing, you can still breathe, still rest, still experience the simple miracle of being alive. That's self-sufficiency. Not having everything you might want, but discovering that what you have, right now, right here, is already enough. Let that truth settle like warmth through your body. You are sufficient. This moment is sufficient. Nothing needs to be added for you to rest. Next chapter, Nature over Convention. Picture a grand banquet in a wealthy Athenian's home. The guests recline on couches dressed in fine robes. Slaves bring course after course, roasted meats, exotic fruits, honeyed cakes, wine from distant islands. Conversation flows about politics, philosophy, the latest scandals. Someone mentions Diogenes dismissively, that disgusting man who lives like an animal. At that moment, Diogenes himself walks in, uninvited, dripping wet from the rain. He grabs food directly from the platters with his hands. He drinks from the wine jug instead of a cup. When someone objects to his rudeness, he asks simply, "Why should I be ashamed of satisfying natural hunger? You're doing the same thing, just with more unnecessary ceremony." This is the third principle, nature over convention. Cynics believe that most social rules exist not for practical reasons, but to create artificial hierarchies. Table manners don't make food more nourishing, they signal class distinction. Elaborate clothing doesn't keep you warmer, it displays wealth. Complex etiquette doesn't facilitate communication, it separates the refined from the crude. Diogenes systematically violated these conventions to reveal their arbitrariness. He would urinate in public, arguing, "Dogs do it and they're following nature. Why should a natural function require privacy?" When people recoiled, he'd point out their hypocrisy. "You think urination is shameful, but going to war isn't." Now, you don't need to follow Diogenes into these extreme demonstrations, but consider what he was revealing. Most of the stress in your life comes not from natural needs, but from conventional demands. You're not tired because your body requires 12-hour workdays. You're tired because convention demands it. You're not anxious because humans naturally need to impress strangers on the internet. You're anxious because convention has created that expectation. You're not inadequate because nature requires you to look a certain way. You feel inadequate because convention has created impossible standards. Strip away the conventions and what remains? Simple, natural needs: food, shelter, connection, rest. These are surprisingly easy to meet. It's all the artificial needs, the shoulds and supposed tos and what will people think, that creates suffering. As you lie here, notice how many of the thoughts troubling you are about violating conventions rather than genuine problems. You're not worried about starving. You're worried about not having the right kind of success. Not worried about survival, worried about measuring up to others' expectations. What if you gave yourself permission, just for tonight, to let those conventions dissolve? To return to something simpler, more natural, more essentially you. Feel how much lighter that makes you. Next chapter, Freedom Through Rejection. One day, a wealthy man approached Diogenes with an offer. "I admire your philosophy," the man said, "but surely you must find this lifestyle difficult. I have a beautiful home with many rooms. Why don't you come live with me? You could have a comfortable bed, regular meals, a warm bath. You could continue your philosophy in comfort." Diogenes looked at him carefully, then asked, "And what would you require of me in return?" "Nothing," the man insisted. "Just, perhaps occasionally join me for dinner, engage in philosophical discussions with my guests. Your presence would honor my household." "I see," said Diogenes. "So in exchange for your bed, I would give up the freedom to sleep when and where I choose. In exchange for your meals, I would give up the freedom to eat on my own schedule. In exchange for your warm bath, I would give up the freedom to avoid your dinner parties." The wealthy man looked confused. "But these aren't sacrifices, these are improvements." Diogenes smiled. "To you, perhaps, but I have learned that every comfort comes with invisible chains, and I prefer freedom to comfort." This is the fifth principle, freedom through rejection. This is perhaps the most counterintuitive aspect of cynicism. We think freedom means having more choices, more options, more possibilities. But Diogenes discovered that true freedom often comes from having fewer. Every possession owns you back. Every commitment constrains you. Every acceptance creates an obligation. When you own a house, you're tied to its location, responsible for its maintenance, anxious about its value. When you accept that job with the higher salary, you accept longer hours, more stress, less control over your time. When you pursue that relationship that looks good on paper, you give up the freedom to wait for genuine connection. Modern life is built on accumulation. More money, more opportunities, more connections, more experiences. We rarely stop to ask what we're giving up in the process. Diogenes asked that question constantly, and most of the time he found that what he was being asked to give up, his freedom, his peace, his independence, was worth more than what he was being offered. This doesn't mean rejecting everything. It means being selective, being willing to say no, understanding that every yes to something is a no to something else. The wealthy merchant says yes to wealth and no to free time. The ambitious politician says yes to power and no to privacy. The social media influencer says yes to attention and no to authenticity. What are you saying yes to, without realizing what you're saying no to? As you drift deeper into rest, imagine the lightness of needing less, the freedom from fewer obligations. The peace of fewer possessions demands your attention. The relief of fewer commitments fragments your time. Rejection isn't poverty. It's selective abundance, choosing what truly matters and releasing everything else. Let that selectiveness filter through your mind now, allowing unnecessary worries to slip away like water through open fingers. Next chapter, Cynicism versus Stoicism. People often confuse cynics with Stoics. Both philosophies emerged from ancient Greece. Both emphasized virtue and self-control. Both taught that external circumstances shouldn't control your inner state. But there's a crucial difference. Stoics believed in participating in society while maintaining inner detachment. A Stoic could be a senator, a soldier, even an emperor like Marcus Aurelius, while practicing Stoic principles. They emphasized duty, reason, and accepting one's role in the cosmic order. Cynics rejected all of that. Diogenes didn't want to be a detached senator. He wanted no part of the Senate. He didn't seek to fulfill his social role virtuously. He rejected the existence of social roles entirely. Stoics said, accept what you cannot change. Cynics said, change everything by needing nothing. Stoics cultivated inner tranquility while continuing to engage with society's structures. Cynics abandoned those structures entirely, living as outsiders, critics, philosophical provocateurs. Think of it this way. A Stoic goes to the dinner party but doesn't let it disturb their peace. A cynic doesn't go to the dinner party at all, or crashes it to demonstrate its absurdity. Both paths lead toward freedom, but by very different routes. As you rest here, you don't need to choose between them. You're simply exploring what cynicism offers, a more radical, more extreme, more uncompromising vision of liberation. Take what serves you, leave what doesn't. That itself would be the cynic way, taking only what's useful, rejecting even philosophy if it becomes a burden. Next part, the paradoxes. Next chapter, freedom through poverty plus modern example. Here's the first great paradox of cynicism. Diogenes achieved freedom by becoming poor. Not accidentally poor, deliberately poor, choosing poverty as the path to liberation. This seems backwards. We associate poverty with constraint. Can't afford this, can't do that, limited options, trapped circumstances. We associate wealth with freedom. We can go anywhere, do anything, buy whatever we want. But Diogenes discovered the opposite. The wealthy man is chained to his wealth. He must protect it, grow it, and manage it. He can't travel freely, his business needs him. He can't trust freely, people want his money. He can't rest peacefully, markets fluctuate, investments risk, competitors schemes. Meanwhile, Diogenes owned nothing and went anywhere. No portfolio to monitor, no property to defend, no income to maintain, nothing to lose. Modern example, consider the tech entrepreneur who builds a successful startup, suddenly worth millions on paper. Everyone says he's achieved the dream. But now he can't walk away. Investors depend on him, employees need him. His whole identity is wrapped up in this company. He works 80-hour weeks, develops chronic stress, and never sees his family. His freedom decreased the moment his wealth increased. Or consider the minimalist who owns 50 things, lives in a tiny apartment and works part-time doing something meaningful, makes barely enough to survive. Everyone says she's trapped in poverty, but she travels when she wants, spends time on projects she cares about, and sleeps peacefully without financial anxiety. Her poverty created her freedom. Poverty, the right kind of voluntary poverty, removes all the chains that disguise themselves as comforts. As you rest here, imagine owning half of what you currently own, then half of that, then half again. Keep going until you reach some essential minimum. Notice how at each step you're not losing freedom, you're gaining it. Next chapter, happiness through rejection plus modern example. The second paradox. Diogenes found happiness by rejecting everything that normally makes people happy. No home, no wealth, no status, no recognition, no comfort, no security. He said no to everything Athens said yes to. And he was joyful. The ancient sources describe him laughing constantly, mocking others, yes, but clearly enjoying himself, finding humor in the absurdity of human pretension, taking delight in his simple existence. Meanwhile, the wealthy citizens around him, with their fine houses, elaborate meals, prestigious positions, were miserable, anxious about maintaining status, worried about losing wealth, competing endlessly for recognition that never satisfied. The paradox is that pursuing happiness directly rarely works, but rejecting the things you think you need for happiness sometimes reveals that you never needed them. Modern example, the Instagram influencer chases happiness through the appearance of happiness, perfect photos, enviable experiences, thousands of likes. But studies show influencers have higher rates of anxiety and depression than average. They're trapped on a hedonic treadmill, always needing more validation, better content, greater reach. Happiness keeps receding. Then there's the person who deletes all social media. At first, it feels like loss, missing out, disconnected, irrelevant. But after a few weeks, peace. Suddenly, no one's vacation makes them feel inadequate. No one's achievements make them feel behind. No one's beauty standards make them feel ugly. They stop chasing the appearance of happiness and start experiencing actual contentment. Rejection of false sources of happiness creates space for real happiness to emerge. As your thoughts slow and soften, consider what you're chasing that might be pushing happiness further away. What if you simply stop chasing? What if happiness was already here, waiting beneath all that pursuit? Next chapter, truth through shamelessness plus modern example. Third paradox, Diogenes accessed truth by abandoning shame. Shame is what keeps us performing. Shame is what makes us hide our natural selves and present polished versions. Shame is what prevents us from asking real questions, admitting real feelings, living authentically. Diogenes performed bodily functions in public. He masturbated in the marketplace. He mocked powerful people to their faces. He violated every social norm designed to create civilized behavior. Why? Because shame was the mechanism of social control. Once you're free of shame, you're free of control. Without shame, he could see clearly. He could speak truth that others only whispered. He could challenge assumptions that everyone else accepted without question. Modern example, think about how much energy we spend managing others' perceptions. The carefully curated social media presence, the resume that inflates every achievement, the dating profile that hides every flaw, the professional persona that conceals personal struggles. Then someone starts a blog where they write honestly about their mental health struggles, their failures, their confusion, their real messy humanity, At first it feels terrifying, so much vulnerability, so much exposure. But then something shifts. Other people respond. Thank you for saying what I was afraid to say. Suddenly, the shameless honesty creates connection, depth, meaning that the polished persona never could. Or the comedian who talks about her body, her sexuality, her insecurities, things society says women should be ashamed of. She turns shame into material, and in doing so, liberates both herself and her audience. The shameless truth is funnier, more human, more freeing than any careful pretense could be. Truth lives on the other side of shame. And once you stop caring what others think, you can finally see what's real. Let yourself feel that now, this private moment where no one sees you, no one judges you. You can be exactly who you are. Notice how peaceful that is. Next chapter, Power Through Powerlessness plus Modern Example. Fourth paradox, Diogenes became powerful by having no power. When Alexander the Great stood before him, offering anything within his power to grant, Diogenes had one advantage. He didn't want anything. That made him immune to manipulation, bribery, threat, or control. You can only control people through their desires. Offer money to someone who craves wealth and they'll compromise. Threaten someone who fears death and they'll obey. Dangle status before someone who wants recognition and they'll perform. But threaten someone who desires nothing, and you have no leverage. Diogenes was untouchable not because he had defenses, but because he had no vulnerabilities. His powerlessness was his power. Modern example, the whistleblower who exposes corporate corruption knows they'll lose their job, their career, maybe face legal consequences. They have no institutional power, but they have one thing the powerful corporation doesn't: willingness to lose everything. They're already prepared to sacrifice what the corporation assumes everyone wants. That makes them dangerous. Or consider the artist who creates work they believe in, even though it won't sell well. The market has no power over them because they're not chasing market success. They're free to make exactly what they want because they've already accepted powerlessness in the conventional sense. The person who needs nothing from you cannot be controlled by you. That's why the homeless sage wielded more real power than the emperor offering him gifts. As you settle deeper, notice where you're seeking power, over circumstances, over outcomes, over other people's opinions. What if you release that need? What if powerlessness was actually liberation? Next chapter, Wisdom Through Simplicity plus Modern Example. Fifth paradox, Diogenes achieved wisdom by making everything simpler, not more complex. Philosophers around him built elaborate theories, metaphysics, epistemology, ethics. They debated abstract questions using sophisticated terminology. They wrote volumes explaining the nature of reality, virtue, knowledge. Diogenes threw away his cup when he saw a child drinking from cupped hands. That was his philosophy. Not more complex, more simple. Not more sophisticated, more direct. Not more clever, more obvious. The elaborate philosophies were often ways of avoiding simple truths. If you make morality complex enough, you can justify almost anything. If you make wisdom abstract enough, you never have to actually practice it. If you make truth complicated enough, you can avoid acting on it. Modern example. The self-help industry has become Byzantine, complicated systems, elaborate frameworks, multi-step programs. You need this app to track your habits, that journal for gratitude, this course for productivity, that coach for accountability. Wisdom becomes so complex it requires experts to navigate. Then someone asks, what if you just did less? What if you just focused on one thing? What if the answer wasn't a complex system but a simple choice? Or consider the difference between mainstream nutrition advice, conflicting studies, competing diets, supplements, timing, macros, and your grandmother's simple wisdom. Eat food, not too much, mostly plants. The simple version is actually more useful than the complex one. Diogenes believed wisdom was obvious. We're just incredibly skilled at obscuring the obvious to avoid doing it. Want to be happier, need less, want more freedom, own less, want peace, desire less. The answers are simple. It's the implementation that's hard because simplicity requires sacrifice. As your mind quiets, let complexity dissolve. You don't need elaborate systems tonight, just a simple presence, simple breath, simple rest. Next chapter, Strength Through Weakness plus Modern Example. Sixth paradox, Diogenes became strong by embracing weakness. He didn't train his body like an athlete. He didn't develop political power. He didn't accumulate resources to protect himself. He made himself deliberately vulnerable, owning nothing, depending on others for food, exposed to weather and ridicule. And yet he couldn't be broken. You can't threaten someone who's already vulnerable. You can't humiliate someone who's already shameless. You can't impoverish someone who's already chosen poverty. He'd already embraced the worst outcomes, so nothing could be used against him. This is the strength of total acceptance. When you stop fighting vulnerability, stop defending against weakness, stop pretending to be invulnerable, you become unbreakable. Modern example. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability reveals that people who embrace their imperfection and weakness are actually more resilient than those who project invulnerability. The person who admits I'm struggling can get help. The person who admits I made a mistake can learn. The person who admits I don't know can grow. Meanwhile, the person projecting invulnerability is brittle. One crack and the whole facade collapses. They're constantly defending, constantly hiding, constantly terrified that someone will see their weakness. Or think about recovery communities, AA, therapy groups, support networks. The opening statement is always confession of weakness. I'm an alcoholic. I'm broken. I need help. That radical vulnerability becomes the foundation of genuine strength. Diogenes lived this completely. He never pretended to be more than human. He never hid his needs, his bodily functions, his limitations. He was obviously, publicly, unapologetically weak in all the ways humans are weak. And somehow, that made him stronger than the powerful people around him. As you rest here, let yourself be weak. You don't have to be strong right now. You don't have to defend anything or prove anything. Weakness is safe here. Next chapter, Richness Through Poverty. The seventh paradox, and perhaps the deepest, Diogenes became rich by owning nothing. Not metaphorically rich, actually rich. Rich in time, rich in freedom, rich in peace, rich in authentic experience, rich in the things that actually matter. The wealthy citizens of Athens owned property, but their property owned them back. They owned businesses, but those businesses demanded constant attention. They owned slaves, but those slaves required management. They owned beautiful objects, but those objects needed protection. Each possession was a form of debt. Each owned thing created obligations, anxieties, responsibilities. Diogenes owned nothing and therefore owed nothing. No rent, no maintenance, no insurance, no security concerns, no time spent managing, protecting, or worrying about stuff. He was rich in a currency that can't be bought, disposable time, unscheduled hours, mental space not cluttered with concerns about things. Think about what real wealth means: having enough time to think, having the freedom to go where you want, having relationships based on genuine connection rather than utility, having experiences that matter rather than possessions that don't, having peace of mind. By that measure, Diogenes was far wealthier than anyone in Athens. Modern example. Studies show that beyond about $75,000 per year, adjusted for location, additional income produces very little additional happiness. But every additional dollar usually requires additional work, additional stress, additional complexity. The person making $300,000 but working 70-hour weeks, managing investments, dealing with tax complexity, and maintaining an expensive lifestyle might be objectively poorer in the things that matter than someone making $50,000 working 30 hours per week with simple finances, living in a small space, and having time for friends, hobbies, rest. Or consider the digital nomad with a backpack of belongings, working remotely from anywhere. Technically, low income by developed world standards, but rich in experience, freedom, adventure, and the ultimate luxury, the ability to wake up and decide what to do with the day. Diogenes knew what every minimalist eventually discovers. Past a certain point, accumulation doesn't add to your life. It subtracts from it. Every possession is a stone in your pack, weighing down your journey. True richness is having exactly what you need and nothing more. Not because you can't afford more, but because you understand that more wouldn't make you richer. As you drift into deeper rest, feel the richness of this moment. You have a place to sleep. You have breath moving through your body. You have this present awareness. In the most essential sense, you lack nothing. That's the richness Diogenes was pointing toward, and it's already yours. Next part is cynicism and inner freedom. Next chapter, why we can't find peace. Why is it so hard to sleep sometimes? Why does your mind race when you want it to rest? Why does peace feel like it's always just out of reach? Diogenes would say, because you're still wanting. Even in bed, even in darkness, even in silence, your mind is reaching for something. Replaying conversations, planning tomorrow, solving problems, comparing yourself to others, worrying about outcomes you can't control. The reaching itself prevents the arriving. Think about a typical day. You wake up wanting coffee. You drink coffee while wanting to check your phone. You check your phone while wanting to get to work. You work while wanting it to be lunch. You eat lunch while wanting the afternoon to pass. You finish work while wanting to get home. You get home and want to relax. You try to relax while wanting to feel more relaxed. The entire day is one long chain of wanting. One desire leading to the next, never a moment of complete arrival. This is why meditation is hard, why presence is elusive, why peace seems impossible. Because underneath everything is this constant hum of dissatisfaction, this background noise of not quite enough, not quite right, not quite there yet. The cynics believe this wanting is learned, not natural. Bobbies don't want careers. Children don't want status. The endless cycle of desire is something civilization teaches us, then offers to solve through more accumulation, more achievement, more stimulation. But you can't solve wanting with getting, because getting just creates new wanting. The only solution is to stop wanting entirely, not to suppress desire but to see through it, to recognize that most of what you think you need, you don't. Most of what you're chasing, you already have. Most of what you're missing never existed. As you lie here, notice the wanting still active in your mind, the desire for sleep itself, the wish for tomorrow to go well, the hope that you'll feel differently, better, more at peace. What if you released even that? What if this moment, exactly as it is, with whatever level of restlessness or peace you currently feel, was already complete? Next chapter, the cynic solution to modern overwhelm. Modern life is designed to create overwhelm, infinite options, constant connectivity, endless information, perpetual demands on your attention. Your inbox fills faster than you can empty it. Your to-do list grows faster than you can complete it. Your social obligations multiply faster than you can fulfill them. New content appears faster than you can consume it. The system is rigged to make you feel inadequate, behind, and insufficient. The standard solution is optimization. Better time management, more efficient systems, productivity hacks, life optimization, work smarter, not harder. But Diogenes would look at all of this and laugh. The problem isn't that you're not managing your overwhelm efficiently enough. The problem is that you're trying to manage it at all. The cynic solution is radical subtraction. Not how can I fit more in, but what can I eliminate entirely? Not how can I be more productive, but what if I produced less? Not how can I keep up, but what if I stopped trying to keep up? This isn't laziness. This is clarity about what matters. You don't actually need to read every article. You don't actually need to attend every event. You don't actually need to maintain every relationship. You don't actually need to achieve every goal you've accumulated. Most of what's overwhelming you is self-imposed, optional, chosen, assumed to be mandatory but actually completely negotiable. Diogenes would walk through your life with a torch as he walked through Athens, looking for what's actually necessary. And he'd find very little. The overwhelm comes from trying to live several lives at once. The successful career life, the perfect family life, the impressive social life, the healthy lifestyle, the cultured intellectual life, the adventurous travel life, the spiritually developed life, the politically engaged life. Nobody can do all of that. You're not failing. The task is impossible. The Cynic solution: choose one or two things that actually matter to you. Really matters, not just looks impressive. Then release everything else without guilt. As you rest here, imagine your life with 70% of current obligations removed. Not the important 30%, just the accumulated weight of shoulds and supposed tos and what will people think. Feel how much lighter that is. That lightness is available, not someday, now, through simple rejection. Next chapter, Detachment versus Apathy. Here's a crucial distinction. Cynicism isn't apathy. Diogenes wasn't numb or indifferent or emotionally dead. He was passionately engaged with life, just not attached to outcomes. Apathy says, nothing matters, so why care about anything? Cynicism says, everything matters, but nothing you want or fear changes that. Apathy is depression. Cynicism is liberation. The difference is that the cynic still acts, still engages, still experiences joy and anger and sadness, but none of it hooks them. None of it controls them. None of it becomes the basis for their peace. Diogenes mocked people viciously. He clearly cared about truth. He taught students. He clearly valued wisdom. He engaged in public demonstrations. He clearly wanted to impact society. But he didn't need any of it to work out a certain way. He wasn't attached to whether people listened, whether his message spread, whether he was remembered. He acted from freedom, not from need. This is the delicate balance. Care deeply but hold lightly. Engage fully but don't cling. Give everything but need nothing in return. Modern Stoicism teaches something similar. Distinguish between what you control and what you don't. You control your actions, not outcomes. So focus your energy on acting well and release attachment to results. But cynicism goes further. It questions whether you even control your actions, whether the you who thinks it's in control is just another illusion. Nevertheless, act, choose, engage. Just don't mistake your preferences for necessities. Don't confuse your plans for reality. Don't assume the universe owes you the outcomes you desire. As you settle deeper, notice the difference between these two states. Apathy: I'm too tired to care anymore. Detachment: I care and I'm at peace regardless of what happens. One is exhaustion, the other is freedom. Next chapter, the freedom paradox revisited. We end where we began, but deeper now. The ultimate paradox of cynicism is that you become free by accepting limitation. You gain everything by needing nothing. You achieve power by embracing powerlessness. This seems impossible. How can having less mean having more? How can wanting nothing lead to satisfaction? How can rejecting the world create engagement with it? But you felt glimpses of it tonight. The peace that comes when you stop wanting something different than what is. The relief when you realize you don't have to maintain an image. The lightness when you imagine needing less. The freedom comes when you release attachment to outcomes. These aren't abstract philosophical concepts. They're lived experiences available right now. Diogenes wasn't teaching a theory. He was demonstrating a possibility, and that possibility is still here, still available, still waiting for anyone willing to step into it. The world will tell you this is crazy, that you need more, not less, that success means accumulation, not subtraction, that happiness requires getting what you want, not wanting nothing. And maybe for some people that's true. Maybe the conventional path works for them. But if you're lying here at night, unable to rest, mind racing through worries and desires and comparisons and plans, maybe it's worth considering that Diogenes saw something others missed. Maybe the man in the barrel, mocked by his contemporaries, understood freedom better than the emperors and philosophers around him. Maybe the deepest peace comes not from having everything under control, but from releasing the need for control entirely. Maybe you're already free, and you've just been taught to believe you're not. As you drift now toward sleep, carry this with you. You need far less than you think. You're far more free than you believe. And the peace you're seeking isn't something to achieve tomorrow. It's something to stop resisting tonight. Next chapter, social media
Next
and
part,
the cynic. Modern application. Imagine Diogenes given a smartphone with Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. He'd study it carefully, then he'd probably throw it in the sea. Why? Because social media is the perfect inversion of cynic values. It's a machine designed to create the exact opposite of freedom. It promises connection but delivers comparison. It promises belonging but creates alienation. It promises self-expression but demands performance. It promises knowledge but provides distraction. Every platform operates on the same principle. Make you feel inadequate so you'll keep scrolling, keep posting, keep seeking the validation that's always just out of reach. You post a photo, you wait for likes. Each notification gives a tiny hit of dopamine. Not enough to satisfy, just enough to keep you checking. You refresh, you scroll, you compare your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. You feel bad, so you create a better post, and the cycle continues. Diogenes would see this immediately. You're teaching yourself to need external validation, to measure your worth by others' reactions, to perform a version of yourself optimized for engagement rather than authenticity. The cynic response isn't to use social media mindfully or set healthy boundaries or limit screen time. It's to recognize that the entire structure is designed to trap you and walk away completely. But I need it for work. I need it to stay connected. I need it to know what's happening. Do you really? People had meaningful work before social media. People maintained deep friendships before social media. People stayed informed about what mattered before social media. What you'd lose is the illusion of connection with hundreds of people you barely know, the constant stream of outrage and opinion, the carefully curated lives that make you feel inadequate, the algorithms determining what you see and therefore what you think about. What you'd gain is time, mental space, actual presence with actual people, freedom from the constant low-grade anxiety of maintaining your digital persona. Diogenes lived in public in the literal marketplace of Athens, but he was fully present there, not performing for an absent audience, not curating moments for later sharing, not filtering reality through the question, how will this look online? The ultimate cynic approach to social media is simple: delete it all, not temporarily, permanently. If that feels impossible, that's exactly why you should do it. The things you think you can't live without are usually the things most limiting your freedom. As you rest here, imagine waking up tomorrow with no social media, no feeds to check, no notifications to answer, no posts to craft, no likes to monitor. Just reality, direct, unmediated present. Feel how much lighter that is. Next chapter, Consumerism and the Cynic. Walk through any shopping district, and you'll see Diogenes' nightmare. Temples of consumption, cathedrals of commerce, shrines to the idea that buying things creates happiness. New clothes will make you confident. New technology will make you productive. New furniture will make your home complete. New experiences will make your life meaningful. It's all a lie. Not because material things are evil, but because the entire system depends on you never being satisfied. If you bought something and felt completely content, you'd stop buying. So every purchase must create temporary satisfaction followed by renewed desire. You get the new phone. It's exciting for a week. Then it's just your phone. Then a newer model comes out and yours feels outdated. The cycle begins again. You buy the perfect outfit. It looks great for a while. Then fashion changes, or your body changes, or you see someone wearing something better. Time to shop again. Consumerism isn't about meeting needs. It's about creating needs that can never be permanently satisfied. Diogenes understood this 2,400 years ago. He watched wealthy Athenians accumulate possessions and noticed they weren't happier, they were more anxious. More possessions meant more to maintain, more to protect, more to worry about losing. The Cynic response: buy only what's necessary. Use it until it's completely worn out. Replace it with the simplest version that functions adequately. Spend your money on experiences that matter and nothing else. This doesn't mean being miserly or joyless. It means being selective, intentional, aware of what you're actually buying. When you purchase something, you're not just exchanging money for an object. You're exchanging your life energy, the time you spent earning that money for this thing. Is it worth it? That expensive coffee machine, is it worth the hours you worked to buy it? Or would a simple French press do the same job for 5% of the price, freeing those hours for something you actually care about? Those designer shoes, are they worth the extra $200 compared to perfectly good shoes that cost $50? What else could you do with that $200 worth of your life? That larger apartment, is it worth the extra rent that requires extra work, that requires extra time away from what matters? Consumerism tricks you into trading your life for things. Cynicism reveals the trade and asks, is this actually what you want? Most people are working jobs they tolerate to buy things they don't need to impress people they don't like. That's not living. That's slow suicide by consumption. The Cynic path: earn enough to cover actual needs. Keep your needs minimal. Spend the remaining time on what actually brings meaning: learning, creating, connecting, contributing, resting. As you drift deeper into sleep, imagine your life with 75% fewer possessions. Not the essential 25%, just all the accumulated stuff that clutters your space and mind. Feel the spaciousness, the simplicity, the freedom from maintaining, organizing, protecting, and eventually disposing of all that stuff. That freedom is available, not by earning more, by needing less. Next chapter: Career, Status, and the Cynic. Diogenes encountered a successful businessman in Athens, clearly proud of his achievements. I own 3 ships, the man boasted. I employ 40 people. My business grows every year. Soon I'll be the most successful merchant in the city. And then what? Diogenes asked. Then I'll expand to other cities, multiple warehouses, hundreds of employees. I'll be wealthy beyond imagination. And then what? Then I can retire comfortably, spend time with family, enjoy life, do what I actually want. Diogenes smiled. Why not skip the decades of stress and do what you actually want now? The businessman had no answer. This is the career trap: working for decades to eventually have the freedom that Diogenes claimed immediately. Modern culture tells you, work hard in your 20s to build your career. Work harder in your 30s to advance. Work hardest in your 40s and 50s to reach peak earning. Then maybe, if you've saved enough and haven't burned out or died, you can retire and finally live the life you wanted. Diogenes would call this insane. You're trading the best years of your life, when you have health, energy, curiosity, for money you'll spend during the worst years when you're tired, sick, and running out of time. The Cynic alternative: do meaningful work that sustains you adequately. Keep your needs minimal so you don't require a huge income. Spend your energy on what matters now, not on building towards some distant future that might never come. This doesn't mean being lazy or unambitious. It means questioning what you're ambitious for. Are you pursuing this promotion because it's genuinely meaningful, or because it's the next rung on the ladder you've been climbing without asking where it leads? Are you working these hours because the work matters, or because you're afraid of what others will think if you don't? Are you chasing this salary because you need it, or because it's a way to measure yourself against others? Status is the ultimate empty pursuit. It's entirely relative. You're only high status compared to others, so you're constantly maintaining position, defending territory, anxious about people below catching up or people above staying ahead. And status is portable only within specific contexts. Your impressive job title means nothing outside your industry. Your social media following means nothing to people who don't use that platform. Your wealth means nothing in a community that values different things. Diogenes had no status and therefore couldn't lose status. That made him immune to the anxiety that drives most careers, the fear of falling, of being surpassed, of becoming irrelevant. He had something better than status: self-sufficiency. He could go anywhere, do anything, speak to anyone without worrying about maintaining his position. The Cynic approach to career: find work that's useful and sustainable, do it well, take pride in doing it well, but don't let it define you. Don't sacrifice everything else for advancement. Don't trade your life for a position. And most importantly, don't confuse career success with life success. They're not the same thing. Often they're opposites. As you rest here, imagine a career without status anxiety. Work you do because it's useful, not to impress. Contribution you make because it matters, not to advance. Skill you develop because it's satisfying, not to compete. Feel how much more peaceful that is. Next chapter: relationships and the Cynic. Diogenes never married. He had no family. He formed no lasting partnerships. He moved through Athens as a lone figure, attached to no one. Does this mean cynicism requires isolation? That freedom means loneliness? Not quite. Diogenes had relationships with students, with fellow philosophers, with people he encountered daily. But these relationships were based on genuine connection, not need. He wasn't with people because he was afraid to be alone. He was with people because, in that moment, connection was happening. The difference is profound. Most relationships are built on need. You need them to complete you, to validate you, to distract you from yourself, to provide security, status, or comfort, to fill the void where your sense of self should be. These relationships are fragile. They're based on trading. I'll meet your needs if you meet mine. And when the trade becomes unbalanced, when someone's needs change, when the arrangement stops working, the relationship collapses. Cynic relationships are based on freedom. Neither person needs the other. They choose each other repeatedly because the connection is genuine. When it no longer serves both people, they part without drama or resentment. This applies to romance, friendship, family, all relationships. The Cynic doesn't stay in relationships out of obligation, doesn't maintain friendships from fear of being alone, doesn't perform family roles from guilt. If a relationship is nourishing, authentic, mutually chosen, wonderful, invest in it fully. If a relationship is draining, performative, maintained from duty, release it without guilt. This might sound cold, but consider the alternative: relationships where you're pretending, where you're performing a role, where you're giving from depletion rather than abundance, where you're staying from fear rather than choice. Those relationships aren't genuine. They're prisons you've both agreed to inhabit. The deepest connections come from freedom, not need. When two people choose each other without requiring each other, without completing each other, without fixing each other, just two whole people enjoying genuine connection. Diogenes was alone often, but he wasn't lonely, because he was complete in himself. Relationship was addition, not completion. Modern culture teaches the opposite. You're incomplete until you find your other half. You need a partner to be whole. You need friends to have worth. You need community to have identity. All of this creates desperate, needy relationships where you're clinging to others to fill gaps in yourself. The Cynic path: become whole first, then connect from wholeness. Love people without needing them to be different than they are. Enjoy company without fearing solitude. Give generously without expecting return. Connect deeply without attaching tightly. As you drift into sleep, imagine relationships based entirely on freedom. No one obligated to stay. No one performing a role. No one meeting anyone else's needs from duty. Just genuine, chosen, freely given connection. That's love without chains. That's friendship without performance. That's family without obligation. That's the freedom Diogenes was pointing toward. Next chapter, your Cynic challenge. Before you fall asleep completely, one simple challenge. Tomorrow, when you wake, ask yourself, what's one thing I can do today that requires needing less? Not a dramatic change, just one small thing. Maybe it's not checking your phone for the first hour. Maybe it's saying no to something you'd usually do from obligation. Maybe it's skipping one purchase you don't actually need. Maybe it's being honest instead of polite in one conversation. One small movement toward needing less, that's all. Because cynicism isn't adopted all at once. It's practiced incrementally. Each small choice to need less, to be more honest, to live more simply, to care less about others' opinions, these accumulate. Diogenes didn't start in a barrel. He worked his way there through countless small rejections of unnecessary complexity. You can do the same, not to his extreme, but in your own way, at your own pace, toward your own version of freedom. One choice tomorrow, that's enough. Next chapter, what Diogenes would say to you right now. If Diogenes could speak to you right now, in this moment, in your bed, in your darkness, what would he say? Probably something like this. You're already free, you just don't know it yet. Everything you think you need, you don't. Everything you think you lack, you have. Everything you're afraid of won't destroy you. The chains you feel are imaginary. The prison is unlocked. The weight you carry is self-imposed. You can put it down, tonight, now, at this moment. Not by achieving anything, not by fixing anything, not by becoming anything. Just by recognizing that the person you already are, the moment you're already in, the life you already have, it's enough. It was always enough. The seeking is what makes it feel insufficient. The wanting is what creates the lack.